So welcome everyone to today's session of Development Economics, and today we are going to discuss three topics, that is poverty, inequality, and development. And they are actually considered as the qualitative side of the economic progress. So if you are wanted to measure economic progress, so GDP is used as a quantitative measure, that how much number is bigger as compared to previous year. So we use GDP or GDP per capita. But when we want to measure the qualitative side of progress, we use indicators like poverty, inequality, and development. So let's add some things here. So it means these indicators are measuring quality of progress. What is the quality? If these values are improving, it means the progress is good for the people in terms of effect on people. Secondly, we also discuss them in another term that is called social development. So it means that how the society or the people living in the society are being getting benefits. So social development word is connected with the word we discussed, capabilities and functioning. Social development means that there is increase in capability to function, that Amrita's and definition that we discussed at the start of this course. Then another word that is used for this topic is called sustainable development. So what is meant by this sustainable development? So it means if you only increase the GDP number but does not increase the welfare of the people, that number can come down anytime. But if uh, if capabilities and functionings are increased, then nation is permanently shifted to a higher level of development. So that's why we call it sustainable development. So because when you improve the standard of living of people, so they move to a higher level. So it's not expected that they will come down again. So that means this process will not reverse. So there is sustainable development. We also use the word for such these terms, and that word term is quality of living or standard of living or human welfare. So when you see the word that people are talking about human welfare, when you see the word people are talking about quality of living or standard of living, when people are talking about sustainable development or social development or quality of progress, you should understand that they are mainly starting their discussion from poverty and inequality. So these two terms are so important that they are the main starting point for these discussions that we mentioned here. So let's continue. So in this chapter, we'll be talking about the definitions of these terms and some facts and figures and current status and some discussion on how to solve these problems. Okay, so let's start. So this progress is important to be discussed because of its relevance with our religion. Our holy prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam seek refuge with Allah from poverty. So Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to pray that we so they our we should he used to seek refuge against poverty, and in Arabic poverty is fakr. So and it's also written in ahadith that this fakr means poverty leads to kufr, means disbelief. So that's why our prophets used to seek refuge from poverty. So let us write in that exact word. So it was feared that kufr, fakr means poverty, may lead to kufr, means disbelief. So that's why it was Prophet used to seek refuge. So this statement shows that how important it is for a nation to solve this problem of poverty, because it does not only create a fall in the standard of living, but it also forces the people to kufr. So we don't want that our nation deviate away from the path of Islam. So not only it has economic consequences, it has religious consequences. So it will be shown in the next slides. Okay, so definition provided by the World Bank is that poverty is starvation, poverty is a deficiency of housing, poverty is being stuck and not able to see a doctor, poverty is not having access to school and not knowing how to read, poverty is not having to work, it is anxiety for the future, living one day at a time. So these are the few dimensions that they talk, that if a person has nothing to eat, he is starving, so he's poor. He has no house and nowhere to live, he is poor. He is not able to access a good doctor or medical services, he is poor. And he has no access to schools, he does not know how to read and write, he is poor. Poor is person who lives one day at a time. He does not have any resources to plan for long time period. He doesn't know he will survive for long time period or not. That's why he lives in the present, and thinks about one day at a time. So he thinks about what he will do, for how he can earn for dinner. Then he will think for how he can earn for next dinner. So he lives for one day at a time. So this is a definition that World Bank has used to describe poverty. Now we go towards some facts and figures. So in 2013, there were 66.6 million poor people in the world, in which 50.75% were located in Africa, Sub-Sahara Africa, and then 33.4% lives in South Asia. So if you look at it from our perspective, from Pakistan, so what you will see that there is 33% of the 76.6 million people are who are poor and living in South Asia. So the majority of the poor after Africa is living in South Asia. So that's a big amount. The recent development in China has had 400 million people out of $1 a day poverty. So China shows a tremendous development and growth, where they moved 400 million people out of the poverty. So that's a very good thing. But during the same time, there has been an increase in $2 a day poverty with a high incidence in sub-Saharan Africa. Even though China was bringing people out of poverty, on the other side, the sub-Saharan Africa, there was increase in poverty. So on net, it's actually there's no much change. So it's just moved from China to Africa. So in terms of facilities, there is at least 1.2 billion people who do not have access to drinkable water. So in the world, there is 1.2 billion people who don't have clean water to drink. They don't have access at their homes. So, and about 2 billion people who do not have to live, who have to live without electricity. So there are 2 billion people in the world who don't have access to electricity for their homes, or so that they can turn on the light and use their energy for cooking, or use the energy for some other productive works, so that they can produce something at their home. We can call it cottage industry. So because they don't have electricity, they cannot use that energy for their work. So it means, so Adam Smith in 1776 explained that no society can surely be flourishing and happy of of which by far the greatest part of the numbers are poor and miserable. So what is saying that if the majority of people are poor and miserable, then that society jointly cannot flourish or cannot move out of, cannot be happy. So if you think that few people in the nation are happy, and so you can assume that they will flourish, but it will not happen, because if the majority of people are poor and miserable, then the society will not be peaceful. So what are the important components that are needed for welfare? That is higher higher income, that will lead to higher expenditures and higher utility. If they spend it on goods and services, they will get higher utility, and it is converted into welfare. Then there is lower inequality, so there should be no difference between rich and the poor, lower differences. And then poverty, so that there are lower proportion of people who are poor. So these are three important components for welfare. Then there are few more that are indirectly covered in these, but if you look at them, so there are some more. We can call them like connectivity, uh, connectivity and infrastructure and freedom. So these are three more that are also important and for welfare. So connectivity, infrastructure, and freedom. So, these are actually included in this. If you have the income, you can have connectivity. If there is the people are not poor, they are free to do anything that they want. So and if the nation is rich, they have good infrastructure. So they are indirectly covered, but these are also qualitative measures that add into welfare. Then if you go forward, so we go to see why we think that poverty is bad. So there are 1.2 billion people living in less than $1 a day, and almost half the world population is living less than $2 a day. So if you see that there is half of the world whose income is less than $2 a day. So uh, if you assume that dollar is 100 rupees, so it means so if you assume it's a $2, so how much dollar a month? That is $60 a month. So $60 a month means if you multiply it with 100, how much it will be? It will be Rs 6,000 rupees per month. So what this definition is saying, that if a person is earning more than 6,000 rupees a month, he is not poor. So that can you assume that a person is earning 6,000 rupees a month and he's not poor, but he can survive a month? Now, in country like Pakistan, 6,000 rupees per month will not even let him pass a week, because things are very expensive, and he does not have any resources to survive. So now consider that many resources we can acquire. How many resources we can acquire by earning only 200 rupees a day? We are not, and we are not considered poor. So actually, we cannot acquire many resources using 200 rupees a day. So these people face issues like undernutrition, poor health, little literacy, degraded environment, little political voice, have to accept life in slums and or facility deprived region. They have to live in situations like this. So because they only have minimum at least 200 rupees a day. So if they are not considered poor, so it means so high level poverty shows a high number of people who are not as fortunate as us. So it means that if you assume that all the people are same, but while comparing it while studying the concept of poverty, we came to know that not all people are same. So they have difference in terms of access to facilities, they have difference in terms of access to resources, they have difference in terms of how they survive their day. So that's why poverty is a very serious issue that we are discussing. So what are the consequences? We already discussed a major consequence that it leads to uh, what is the term that we used? Disbelief. So it is to disbelief. So poor have so what are the consequences? The poor have no access to credit and finance. So the poor will not be able to take a loan, or they don't have a bank account because they don't have enough saving. They have little or no investment in education. So because they don't have any resources, so they don't have any investment done on education. You remember the video that we saw on few weeks ago regarding the expenditure on education by poor, and you saw that poor have a very small stock of savings. So what will happen if they get a shock? They will, first of all, they will um, put the remove their children from schooling because they cannot afford it anymore. So the education will be the first thing that will be sacrificed when they are poor. So they have poor health and nutrition. So they are not able to access good food, fruits and vegetables. So they don't have good health. So they have low economic productivity that we discussed in the vicious circle of poverty. That the poor, first, they don't have skills, and they don't have education, they don't have capital to invest. So what happened, their productivity level is very low. Since they don't have very high income, so they have low demand of goods and services. They cannot afford or buy goods and services in the economy. So it leads to low growth of production or businesses. So and then they have low self-esteem. So when they are poor, their dressing, their society, their social circle, their way they walk, the way they talk is totally different from the people who are not poor. So it means when you can visibly differentiate between rich and the poor, that leads to lower self-esteem. So we can write it here. We can describe that thing. Let's see. So when a poor is not able to mix in the society with the rich, then normal then we can visibly differentiate between rich and the poor. So what will happen when we are able to differentiate between rich and the poor? Then what? Then the poor will feel lower self-esteem as he is sensing the dislikeness of people when they are looking at them. So when a normal person or any third person is able to differentiate between the rich and the poor, then definitely that normal person will try to talk or sit or communicate with the rich. He will try to stay away from the poor because he's not clean, he's not hygienic, he doesn't have a good clothing. So and it is assumed that they are illiterate, so they might have a bad influence on their children. So people try to stay away. And since people are behaving like this, so poor will feel that he's being uh, so low self-esteem will come from the fact that poor will feel that he is being excluded from the masses. So let's write it in the excluded from the access to general facilities. So general facilities, like he has a he has access to talk to people. He has access to communicate, he has access to attend meetings, he has access to have a voice, have a say, he has access to share what he is thinking. So, but since the people are not willing to talk to him, so he doesn't have access to these things. So this will lead to lower self-esteem. So this is the consequence of poverty. Okay, let's continue to the next slide. So another detailed consequences include that consequences of poverty include food, energy, hunger. So they don't have access to food and they don't have access to energy. So it will create food, energy, hunger, starvation for daily dietary requirements. So they will not be able to fulfill the daily food intake requirement that is needed to survive the day. And they have social exclusion from access to resources, including education. So they are excluded from the society, especially in terms of access to education. So these are some resource references attached to them. The economic outcome of these consequences are evident in terms of low productivity. So what will happen? Poor will lead to low productive labor resource and demand of population, as suggested in vicious circle of poverty we already discussed. So it will also lead to high infant mortality rate. What will happen? They have better, they don't have access to better health. So it will lead to higher levels of infant mortality rate. These community will experience higher mortality rate of their new children, newborn babies. So that will show that they have a lower level of health standard, and even stunted growth of these children. So what is stunted growth? That the children that are born in this community have uh, defected brain development, so they are not able to be that intelligent as compared to others. So it means they are by birth, they are by definition excluded from access to higher education, because they don't have brain cognitive ability developed because of less access to resources, food and energy to their parents. So it means now he's permanently not able to become developed. Other poverty indicators can be removed by providing them facilities or get them better education. But if the children is stunted, then he's permanently out of the race. So he cannot be converted into a developed person or a rich community. So that's a very bad or very severe outcome of poverty. Then poverty may go beyond boundaries. It may lead to migration. So people might move away from the area and move to some other part of a city or part of a country to find jobs. They engage into violent activities, so they might engage into crime and maybe terrorism. So that's why this is the thing that the crime and terrorism comes into disbelief. So it's kufr. So these are some consequences of poverty. That's why when we talk about development, so poverty is the first thing that comes into our mind. Okay, let's see next. So before we measure any talk about poverty, so we need to, from the Islamic side, we need to divide our unlimited needs and wants into three types. We already discussed these details, so I will go briefly. So there are three types of needs and wants. First are basic necessities, which are for peaceful survival. There are essentials which are required to make a life easier, and there are pure luxuries which are for higher social image. So when you are trying to reduce poverty, so first of all, you need to make sure that basic necessities are provided first to everyone. So the poverty of basic necessities should be removed first, then poverty of essentials, and then poverty of poor luxuries, so that there's a gradual climb of everyone in the society. So that's why it is being shown here. So since every human is different, has a different urge for different needs, so there is no single point of agreement that that can be used as a universal poverty criteria. So there is no basket of goods that we can say that if everyone has this basket of goods, then he's not poor, because everyone has different needs and wants, and maybe in different combination or different values. So we cannot have a basket of goods that we discuss in macroeconomics, that if this basket of goods people buy, so this is this cost of living, and so they use the method to measure cost of living. But here we cannot use the basket method because everyone has different needs. So what we use, we can make a reference criteria depending upon the society and people who are below the and, and make a reference criteria, depending upon the society and people who are below that reference will be considered we will consider them poor, while others who have more resources than the reference are not poor. So we'll say that this is a reference line. It will be measured in terms of income. So people who have more than that income will say that they have ability to buy anything that they need or want, so they are not poor. So when people whose income is less than that line, we say that their income is not sufficient to fulfill their needs and wants, so they are poor. So this way we can measure poverty. So next we go towards the, so first of all, the method is used is called absolute method of poverty. So absolute method is the first line of reference methods. So its definition is the poverty is the number of people who are unable to command sufficient resources to satisfy basic needs. They are counted as the total number of people living below the specified minimum level of real income. So we'll just measure it in a way that number of people who have income less than the benchmark. So the minimum real income is set by the world to be $1.25 and purchasing power parity. So let's go and see in detail. So the how to measure absolute poverty, the method is head count index. Head count index. So how it is measured, let H be the number of people whose income fall below the poverty line, which is YP, and N is the total population. So head count index is H number of people who are poor, whose income is less than YP, and N is the total population. So this measures the poverty percentage. The main idea behind is to make a qualitative measure scale. If a person's income fall below it, is surely a candidate for social support. So we are just actually differentiating between rich and the poor, so that we can find who is deserving social support. So people will still ask for more and claim that they are poor, but this scale will make a fair and clear division of poor and not poor. So this scale can help us to exclude not poor from the social support group, so that we know that these are a set of people that we need to provide support. Otherwise everyone could come, and because needs and wants are unlimited, so everyone will say we are poor. So how problem is HCI measurement? Statisticians usually evaluate general market basket for basic necessities and adds its cost to determine the necessary poverty line. So now we assume the poverty line of Pakistan is 12,000 rupees per month. So let's assume. Now according to HCI, a person with income 11,000 is considered as, and a person with income 3,000 are considered as poor with same degree. So it means the problem with HCI is that if the poverty line is 12,000 a month, and there are two people, one person has 11,000 income and second person has 3,000 income, both are considered poor. But if you compare that, the first person is nearer to 12,000 and other is very far. So there is a huge difference between 11,000 and 3,000. But according to HCI, both are same and both are poor. So clearly the poverty is more serious in the second case. This is not captured in the HCI measurement. So this is a flaw. So let's continue with so then there is a second method that is called poverty gap method. So this method measures the total income required to bring everyone who are below poverty line to at least up to the poverty line. So what it does is, so it measures how much dollars we need to pay. So let's write it here. So it measures how much dollars we need to pay to our to the poor in the country, so that every poor is at least on the poverty line, so that they are not poor. So that measures the poverty level. So even though both cases in the graph shown that they have equal poverty line, so this is the percentage of population who has less than this p income. So both says that 50% of population are poor, but in a case the poor has lower proportion of income because it is bended downward, but in the B case the it is above. So what it is showing that country A has more severe poverty, and country B has not severe poverty, but in terms of headcount index both have same. So as per SCI, but poverty is more severe in country A, as there are more percentage of people who are further below the poverty line. So they are more deprived as compared to country B, and it requires more effort, which is how much dollar we need to pay to provide them basic relief. So it means if a country where even though both countries have same proportion of poor people, but in a country A the poor are more poor, so it means in country A, more income is required for them to move to the poverty line. So it means in terms of poverty gap method, country A is more poor, and we call it relative poor. So they are relatively more poor. So this method clearly differentiates between absolute extreme poor and normal poor. So that's why we move from the headcount index HCI to PG method, so poverty gap method. Okay, so then we go towards, so then there's a next indicator that so then how to measure poverty gap. So total poverty gap, it describes the total income shortfall of the population from the minimum income standard. So minimum income standard means if they are the poverty line. So how much income is needed for everyone to be on the poverty line? So the measure is TPG is a poverty line minus income of the nation. So it measures the gap, how much income is needed by each person. So the more precise we can measure average gap, that is average poverty gap, total poverty gap divided by H, and H is total number of households. And hence it depends upon poverty line, which is different for each country. So in order to make it comparable, we calculate the national poverty gap, that is average poverty gap divided by poverty line value. So if NPG lies between 0 and 1, its value lies between 0 and 1, where 1 means uh, one means least per capita poverty, means the poverty is very low, and 0 means very high poverty. Okay, so and now as it though no units, it is comparable with other countries and other time periods which have different poverty lines. So this method can be used to compare other countries and other times because it does not have any unit. So when if they have a unit, then we need to convert it into similar units so that we can measure. Its units is percentage. So any unit, any other measure of poverty gap which whose units are percentage, we can compare with each other. So after that, there is a new indicator called FGT, Foster, Greer, and Thorbecke measurement. So this measure analyzes the degree of inequality among the poor and places more emphasis on extreme poor, as they are more vulnerable. According to FGT, desirable measure of poverty should be sensitive to income distribution among the poor, which HCI and TPC are not capable of. So, the HCI was able to measure number of people, and the TPC is able to measure the relative form. But the FGT is actually talking about that there is another thing, that is distribution between the poor, among the poor, that how unequal poverty is between the poor people. So he added, so let's see an example. So this example is, so let's see if uh, there are two kinds of farmers. One who is just poor. First one farmer is only poor, but he has uh, land, he has a machinery available, he has animals that he can use in the farm. But there is a second farmer who is very poor because he do not have a big farm. So there are two farmers. First is just a normal ordinary type of poor who does not have any resources to survive, but he has available land, so he gets income every year. So he's only poor because he has low saving rate and low productivity. And second poor is because he's poor because he has low productivity. Secondly, he don't have a land to so where he can get higher income from. So if the prices of crop increases, means that the product that they are selling is becoming more profitable. The farmer who are just poor can cross the poverty line because of high because of because of price has increased their income. Okay, so it means the first farmer can become non-poor because his output has become expensive, he's earning more income, so he may cross the poverty line. But on the other hand, there are farmers who are extremely poor because a small piece of land increase in price cannot help them to get out of the poverty. So for them, increase in prices will not help them because they don't have big land to produce at a larger amount and earn higher revenues from their crops, and then that revenue may lead to moving them out of the poverty line. So there's a difference between these two poor. First poor is just normal poor, and second is extreme poor with no access to resources. So FGT is trying to handle this problem. So let's go. So he says that FGT says that there should be the four properties that is needed, and if that are there, then that indicator is good to measure poverty. First is this measure should not be dependent who is poor. So it means the poverty should not be subjective, that he is black, so he's poor, he is white, he is not poor, he is from the rural area, is poor, he is not, is an urban area, not poor. So the poverty should not be based upon who is poor. Poverty should be based upon why he is poor or what makes him poor. So it should be anonymity. It's not be based upon his race or his name or his color or his geographic position. So poverty should be independent of who is poor. Then poverty should be not be dependent upon the origin of poor. So from the small or large population. So population should not poverty should not be dependent upon if a country is big or small. So we are assuming that India is big, so they will have high poverty, and Pakistan has a small population as compared to India, so they have small poverty. So it should not be. So it should be independent. It should not have population dependence. So it should be free of the scale of size of the economy. If we increase the income, and third property is, if we increase the income of one poor, keeping others income constant, then poverty from the index should not increase. So it is saying that if we are increasing the income of the poor, and other people who are not poor have same income, then the index should not show increase in poverty, rather than it should show decrease in poverty. So it should be properly constructed so that it is showing the thing that actually is happening. Third is, if you transfer income from the rich to the poor, then then the poverty from index should increase. So what is talking about that if we take income from the poor who was already poor and give it to the rich, technically poor was already poor. So HCI will not be able to differentiate anything. So it should have distribution sensitivity. So if we take income from the poor and give it to the rich, then the indicator should show that there is an increase in poverty in the economy. So FGT index formula is P alpha is 1 over n, adding all the households from 1 to H and calculating their gap, poverty line minus their income, power alpha divided by poverty line. So here YP is poverty line, YI is the income of the household, and there are household from 1 to H. So there are H number of households. So we are adding gap of all the households. Decimation means adding, and from 1 to H. So if there are 10,000 households who are poor, we are adding 10,000 times. And what we are adding YP minus YI power alpha. And then we are dividing it by poverty line and then dividing it by population. So here Y is the income and ith person, I of ith person, and YP is the poverty line, and is total population, H is total poor according to head count ratio, the total number of people who are poor or total households that are poor. And if alpha takes a value from 0 to 2. If we use alpha is equal to 0, then you will see that this formula becomes H over N. Okay, it becomes head count ratio. How it becomes H over N? So if alpha is 0, it will become 1, and if you add 1 with each other up till H, so it will become H. Some summation of constant till point H becomes H times that constant. So H into 1 is H. So H over N. YP YP will be so POs is H over N. So it becomes head count ratio. So when alpha is 1, it becomes normalized poverty gap. So if you added 1, so we already know it's normalized poverty gap. It's same as TPG or national normalized poverty gap. We have seen it earlier. I used NPG as national poverty gap. It's also known as normalized poverty gap. If alpha is 2, it becomes H over N, NPG square, 1 minus NPG square, and CV whole square. So it contains the CVP, which is which changes because of the distribution. Hence, it has all three properties for a good poverty measure. This measure is now used by United Nations as it measures the depth and intensity of poverty. So it's a good indicator to measure poverty. Let's continue. So now there is a new indicator that is being used globally, that is called Human Poverty Index, or we also call it Human Development Index. It's similar to human. So development by UNDP in it is developed by United Nations Development Program in 1997. This measure substitutes the income in calculating poverty. So what they thought that actually the income should not be used as an indicator of poverty, because even if we give income to people and but they don't have access to anything, that income will not help them to get out of the poverty. And even if they get them income and there is high inflation, then their income is not useful. So they need to measure something that is free of income. So it includes following key deprivations of poor, which are deprivations of poor, which are missed, which should be there for. So first is life. There is 30% people in low development countries who do not expect to live beyond 40 years of age. So in the low development countries, in poor countries, LDCs are low development country. So who do not expect to live beyond 40. So the people who cannot live more than 40, if you give them income, they will only able to spend it for 40 years, then they will die. So first of all, development should see that they can live longer. Second is basic education. means the percentage of people who are literate should increase. Third, overall economic provisioning, percentage of people who have access to say health, safe water, and percentage of children who are not underweight. So it means that there are three things that are, if they are increasing, then we can say that there is increase in if these three things are falling, then it means there is increase in poverty. What are these things? In decrease in life expectancy. Second is decrease in literacy. Third is decrease in access to health. Decrease in access to water. Safe water means drinkable water. And increase in the 5-year-old children who are under. So these are indicators. If they are moving in this direction, it means there is increase in poverty. So if you measure using this, you will see that this poverty is a lot higher than the income method. Why? Why it will experience a lot higher? Because incomes do not guarantee that people have access to what they need. For example, they don't have school in their community, or they don't have clean water in their place, in their society, or in their city. They don't have access to hospitals. So even if they are rich, they cannot do anything from that income. So they will be not poor in terms of income, but they will be poor in terms of human poverty index. Okay, let's continue. So now we'll go towards the scenario of Pakistan. So we can see, according to World Bank report, I have provided two types of poverty. One is poverty headcount ratio, that was HCI, headcount index, and then poverty gap, which was the NPG, normalized poverty gap. So and there are three types. So headcount ratio based upon $1.9 a day, headcount ratio based upon $3.2 a day, headcount ratio based upon $5.5 a day, and poverty gap based upon $1.9 a day, poverty gap based upon $3.2 a day, poverty gap based upon $5.5 a day. So from that we can see that as with respect to $1.9, Pakistan's poverty was increased from 96 to 2005, and then it has reduced considerably. So Pakistan has reduced a lot in terms of $1.9 poverty gap. Then it has reduced in terms of 3.2. It has reduced in terms of 5.5. Then it has also reduced in terms of headcount in terms of $1.9 a day. It has reduced so in terms of $3.2 a day and $5.5 a day. So there is a decreasing pattern of poverty in Pakistan. But you can see that the and then you can see the population and economic GDP growth. So you will see that there is an increase in population. So there's a burden to decrease poverty, but we are still able to decrease in poverty relatively. So this is the some facts and figures that are shown for case of Pakistan. So solution of poverty. So first, there are many, but I am providing it here. Few of them, then so that we can discuss and then we can add more. First is increase minimum wage. If you force a law that firms should pay minimum this amount of wage, then you should, and when if you increase that minimum wage, then you will see that there is a decrease in poverty, and and uh, and then you subsidize the firms that they should not fire the workers if they are increasing the wage. Create fair asset ownership. There should be land reform so that people who have access to large lands should be distributed to the poor who don't have access to land, so that they can do agriculture and they have fair chance to earn high and get out of poverty. There should be appropriate tax system where the rich should be taxed more than the poor, so that government can earn a higher amount, and then they can use that to create safety nets to provide subsidies or transfers to the people who are poor. So subsidies and transfer example is already known. So the SARS program by the present government is an example of safety nets. And then we can educate them to increase their productivity, which will help them to get out of poverty. So these are few ways we can tackle poverty. Okay, let's continue. So next topic that we are going to discuss is the income inequality. So before discussing, I will give you one example. So consider traffic is moving on a two-lane road. So there is two-lane road, and they're moving very fast, and there's a traffic on both lines. There are two lanes, and suddenly it gets stuck on both lanes. So there's some diversion, and both lanes are stuck. In this case, the driver see everyone stationary, so everyone is stuck. So everyone will see that all of them are stuck. So they will continue to wait because no one of them, no one in the surrounding is prospering. So they will use patience, because we assume it as poverty. So they are stuck in the poverty, and everyone that is surrounding them are also stuck in poverty. So what they will do, they will they will be patient, and because none of them is growing, so they will say that since all of us are stuck, so we should wait. So whereas if one lane is open and other is stuck, so what will happen if in the two lane road one of them is stuck? So firstly, it will create hope. The line which is stuck, will the people will be hopeful that our line will start moving soon, but it will not stay for long. Why? In order to make their way, the drivers in the jam lane will try to obstruct the moving lane impatiently. So they will lose their patience, and they will try to get enter into the moving lane. And this, and what will happen, the moving lane will stop because it will get stuck too. So this phenomenon works in the same way if there is income inequality in the economy. So what is shown here, that suppose there are two types of poor. One are who are getting out of poverty line, and other who are not getting out of poverty line. So what will happen? The people who are getting out of poverty line will prosper, but the people who are not getting out of the poverty line will be hopeful first that their turn will come, but after some time they will become impatient, and they will try to steal or obstruct the people who are getting out of the poverty, and they will create trouble. So this example was given by Hirschman and Rothschild in 1973, and it is explains how income inequality is more bad as compared to poverty, because it creates disturbance in the society, because people will become impatient. So facts are there are some facts and figures that explain how much inequality is there in the world. So the three richest people in the world have more money than lowest 48 countries combined. So if we add the income of three richest people, and then if we add the income of 48 poor countries, then the three richest people have more income. That's a huge difference. Three people have more income than 48 poor countries. Piketty in 2018 concluded that bottom 50% of the population only get 12% of the growth from 1980 to 2016, whereas richest 1% grab 27% of the resources in these 4 decades. So what it is saying that between these 1980 to 2016, let's assume that we grew by 100 units. So let's write it here. Assume that we grew 100 units between 1980 and 2016 as so in this 100 units, so in these 100 units, the poor 50% only got 12 units, and the rich 1% got 27 units. So this is a huge inequality. So in these four decades, the rich are able to extract more out of the global growth than the poor. 64% of the world's population has just 2% of the global wealth, and whereas richest 1% has 46% of the resources of the globe. So what is saying that 64% of the poor. So the poorest 64, so bottom 64% only have 2% of the global resources, and 1% richest have 45% of resources globally. So this means there's a huge inequality. 10% of the richest has 84% of the world wealth. 228 Forbes billionaire have wealth about 9,100 billion. That is higher than the combined GDP of all the countries except USA and China. So it means the richest 2,208 billionaires, the richest 2,028 people have this much resources, which is more than the combined GDP of all the countries except USA and China. So it means if you add the GDP of all the countries excluding China and USA, their GDP is less than the 2,208 rich people. That is showing that there is a huge degree of income inequality. In 2009, there were 380 billionaires whose wealth was equal to the world's poorest 50%. So it means that in 2009, 380 people had resources equal to 50% poor. But in 2018, only 26% have those resources equal to the bottom half of humanity. So income inequality has increased. Oxfam 2019 reported that if additional 1% tax is imposed on the rich 26 people, the richest 26 people, it will be sufficient to finance to educate every children out of school and provide facilities of health that would decrease 3 billion deaths per year. So this much income that we can earn. So if we have tax 1% to the richest 26, so that income will be sufficient to provide schooling and health, and it will reduce 3 million deaths per year. That's a huge income. The Oxfam also reports that half of the population lose their income by 11% when a billionaire is minted. So it means whenever there's a new billionaire is made, world half of the poor people lose their income by 11%. So the billionaire extract that income. So it increases income inequality. So what is inequality? By its name, inequality means that when income is not proportionally distributed among the population, the presence of inequality shows that the education system, economic system is not efficient. Okay, so following slide will show the scenario of global inequality. So I'm going to use the Gap Minder software to show the scenario. Let me open it up from the screen share. Let's see where it is. Yes. So in this scenario, let's get it up. So this is an animation of the income of this is the animation includes four groups of countries: high income countries, which is shown in dark green; upper middle income countries, which is shown in light green; then low middle income countries, which is shown as light blue; and low income countries, which is shown as dark blue. So there are four group of countries, and we are reporting their number of people by income. How many people have how many people have how much income. So the poverty line is 1.96, which is shown here. So in 1800, there was 87% poverty. So in the years. Now I'm going to play the video so that you can see how the poverty has changed. So you can see that year has, let's start, the year is increasing and the poverty is gradually reducing and the number of incomes are increasing. And then you can see that gradually the number of rich people is moving this way. So the high income countries are first cross the poverty line, then the upper middle income has crossed the poverty line, and the middle income has crossed the poverty line. Just what is left, the low income countries are below the poverty line. If you go over the mouse, you can see their names. So these are names of the countries which are in the poverty line, and these are names of countries which are in the developed country group. These are names of the countries which are in upper income countries, and these are the names of the countries which are, so Pakistan is here, which are in the lower middle income. So globally there is 11.3% poverty, but if you move this poverty line, so you can see how the income is different. So there is actually 4 groups. So one center is here, this is the income average. Second center is somewhere here, okay, and the third center is somewhere here, and the fourth is here. So the poor countries, the low income are below the poverty line, their average is below, and the other. So this so now compare this and with the initial diagram. So the distance from the lowest and the highest has increased. So what has happened, that there is a poverty line. So if you use some other poverty line gap, so if you move also how much poor are there, because so for every number of dollar a day value, you can see how much poor people are there. So let's assume some number, that we assume that let's write it here. So we assume that if we have around $15 dollar a day, we are definitely not poor. That much income is enough to survive per person. So let's see, using this definition, how many people are poor. So I will move my mouse on the screen and see at $15 a day. So here at this point 14.9, and it is, let's see, 15. So at this point there is 72.2% people who are poor in the world, and 27.8% people who are earning more than $15 a day. So how much people are poor? 5.29 billion people, according to $15 a day, and 2.04 billion people are not poor. So this way, this diagram is useful to differentiate between how many rich and the poor. I will share you the link of this software so that you can download. And the advantage of this software is you can have many other type of animations that you can make, and that will help you to understand uh, the concepts. Now we go back to the slides. Let's see. So we have seen how much poverty was there. Let's move to another point. So measuring inequality. So size distribution of income method. It is mostly commonly used. It engages the population in an increasing order of its personal income. So in this method, what we do is we arrange the population in terms of their income and divide the population into equal groups to make a percentile or decile. Then the difference of the income, difference of the proportion of population and the proportion of income, they will tell the they will show that there is poverty. So using this, Simon Kuznet calculate the ratio of income received by top 20% and bottom 40% of the population. So higher the index shows higher inequality, and if it is 0.5 if the answer is 0.5, it will show perfect equality. So that indicator was proposed by Simon Kuznet. So let's see the diagram. So the curve shows that actual quantitative relationship between percentage of income and percentage of income recipients means people, and percentage of income, and they did in fact receive each year. So at this point we use number of proportion of population. So here 10 means 10% of population, 20% of population, 30% of population, and so on. And that 10 is percentage of income of the bottom 10%. This 20 means percentage of income of bottom 20%, percentage of income of bottom 30%. So this is arrangement of income in increasing order, and this is arrangement of population in percentage. So ideally, if there is equality, then it should follow a straight line. Should follow a straight line means the bottom 10% should have 10% income, and bottom 20% should have 20% income, so on and so forth. But in reality, if there is inequality, bottom 10% will have less than 10% income, bottom 20% will have less than 20% income, bottom 30% will have less than 30% income, so on. It means the more the bendy the line is, the more the line is different from the equality, the more inequality is there in the society. So that so the difference between the straight line and the bended line is the inequality. So the 45-degree line is showing the reference line where each proportion of population has same proportion of income, which is the ideal case, and the bent line is showing the actual proportion. So the further the curve is bent away from the 45-degree line, the more inequality is present. Hence, we can compare inequality among two regions with this method. Next is, this is also, and using this line we calculate Gini coefficient. Gini coefficient is a mathematical value generated from the Lorentz curve. So the line that we made earlier is Lorentz curve. So its value lies between 0 and 1, where 0 means equality and 1 means perfect inequality. The formula is shaded region A, blue one, and shaded region B, C, D, B, C, and D. So the triangle BCD is in the bottom and the shaded region. So if A is equal to BCD, it means that there is perfect inequality. If A is 0, means it is not there and it's equal to horizontal straight line, then there is no inequality. So this index fulfills the following properties. It fulfills the anonymity, it fulfills the scale independence, it also considers the transfer principle. So the properties that we discussed earlier. So why inequality is bad? So extreme inequality leads to economic inefficiency. It leads to rise in poverty. It falls the saving rate in the society. The rich few will have a bargaining power in the society in terms of jobs, politics, and justice. It will lead to corruption or rent-seeking activities by the poor. And then there is high prevalence of crime and social unrest, because the poor who don't have will try to steal from the people who have. So and then there is social unrest. So Kuznet curve is for the case of Pakistan. So Kuznet suggested that so we already discussed it. So let's see the table. So the Pakistan's bottom 20% are only earning 8.4% of the national resource. So it's the values of 1991. So bottom 20% is earning 12.9. Bottom then the third. Okay. So bottom 20% is, and then from 20 to 40 it is 12.9, and then 40 to 60 is 16.9, and then 60 to 80 is 22.2, and then 80 to 100 is 13.9, 39.7. It means from 60 to onward the people are earning more than their ability. So bottom 60% are earning less than what they should have, and bottom 40% is earning more than they should have. So there is inequality in Pakistan. So, and Simon Kuznets also mentioned this in his idea that, let's draw it here. So according to him, so we already discussed in the previous video that the idea of Kuznets curve. So we can put INEQ, inequality here, and then we put growth here on the x-axis. So what will happen, that initial stages of growth will create inequality, and then it will resolve it. So this is called trickle down effect. So economy will be, so when they are growing, first of all the businesses will grow, and the business will create inequality, and then when we tax them properly, and then when they create jobs, it will solve the income inequality in the country. So this way, we already discussed the trickle down effect. So this is actually explaining the same this topic of income inequality, trickle down effect. So let's move to next slide. So so what we conclude is that poverty and inequalities are interrelated. Poverty is talking about individuals, and income is talking about distribution, and jointly both of them both of them are discussing the social development aspect of the society. So this way, today in this video we discussed how social development is measured, and then what are some facts and figures, and how it is, what is the incidence of Pakistan. So hopefully you understood what we discussed, and do ask any question if you want, and let's see if we can solve it in the session.